The moment Dr. Whitfield's smile faltered, I knew my marriage was a lie. I'd been sitting there in that upscale OB/GYN office, holding Megan's hand like some lovesick teenager. She was glowing. That's the word everyone uses, isn't it? Glowing. Tears streaming down her face, squeezing my fingers so hard I thought she might break them. 8 weeks pregnant. Our miracle baby. I was already thinking about nursery colors. Whether we'd go with that sage green she'd been pinning on Pinterest or the soft yellow my mother had suggested, I was thinking about the $15,000 I'd spent on the vasectomy reversal 6 months ago, the brutal recovery, the ice packs between my legs for weeks while I shuffled around like a wounded animal. I was thinking about how worth it all was, sitting there in that office, about to become a father. Then Dr. Whitfield looked at her tablet, then at me, then back at the tablet. Her smile didn't just falter, it froze. The professional mask every doctor wears when they're about to deliver news that will change your life. I'd seen that look once before, when my father's oncologist sat us down in a room that looked a lot like this one. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice shifting into something careful, clinical. "I need to discuss something with you privately." Megan's grip tightened. "What? Why? Is something wrong with the baby?" "The baby is perfectly healthy," Dr. Whitfield assured her. But her eyes stayed on me. I knew. Right then, in that sterile room with the anatomical posters on the walls and the ultrasound image of what I'd thought was my child still glowing on the screen, I knew. The human brain is remarkable. It can process a lifetime of betrayal in the space between heartbeats. "It's fine, honey," I said, and I'm still proud of how steady my voice was. "Probably just some boring medical stuff from my procedure. You rest. I want to know what's going on." Megan's voice had an edge to it. Fear, maybe, or something else. "Really?" I said, squeezing her hand before letting it go. "Sit tight, I'll be right back." The walk to Dr. Whitfield's private office felt like walking to my own execution. She closed the door behind us, gestured to a chair. I sat. "Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed your records from Dr. Anand, your post-reversal fertility reports." "Okay." "Conception occurred approximately 8 weeks ago." "Yes." She folded her hands on the desk. I noticed her wedding ring, simple gold band, a modest diamond. She'd been married a while. I wondered if her husband had ever sat in a chair like this one. Wondered if she'd ever had to deliver news like this to someone she loved. "Your sperm count test from 10 weeks ago showed 0 viable sperm. Your follow-up test 4 weeks ago showed minimal recovery, nowhere near the threshold for conception." She paused. "Let me do the math myself. Based on the timeline, Mr. Hayes, conception would have occurred during your documented sterility window." There it was. The grenade I hadn't seen coming, detonating in the middle of my chest. I sat there. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't give her the satisfaction of watching a man crumble, though she probably wasn't looking for satisfaction, just dreading this conversation like any decent person would. "I see," I said. "I'm sorry. I thought you should know. The discrepancy is significant." "I appreciate you telling me." She studied me. Waiting, I supposed, for the breakdown. The tears. The shouted denials. Something. "Mr. Hayes, I know this is... Is there anything else medically relevant I need to know?" She blinked. "No. The pregnancy is progressing normally." "Then I appreciate your time." I stood up, straightened my jacket, noticed my hands weren't shaking, which surprised me. "Is there anything I can..." She started again. "I'd appreciate if this stayed between us. Doctor-patient privilege." "Of course." I walked back to the waiting room. Megan looked up at me, her eyes still shining with that maternal joy that now made my stomach turn. She'd been looking at a parenting magazine, some article about nursery themes. "Everything okay?" she asked. I bent down and kissed her forehead. Smelled her shampoo, the same jasmine scent she'd worn since we met. Now it just smelled like deception. Everything's perfect, I said. And I meant it. Because in that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood exactly what I needed to do. That night, I lay in bed next to my wife, next to the woman who had made me slice myself open so she could pass off another man's child as mine, and listened to her breathe. She fell asleep easily, exhausted from pregnancy fatigue. I stared at the ceiling until her breathing deepened into something rhythmic and trusting. Then I went to my home office. I didn't pour a drink, didn't punch a wall, didn't do any of the things a man is supposed to do when he discovers his wife has been unfaithful. Instead, I opened my laptop, created a new encrypted notes file, and started writing. What I know, baby conceived approximately 8 weeks ago. I was sterile at time of conception. Megan knows the timeline of my recovery. She was at every appointment. What I need to know: who is the father? How long has this been going on? Does she know the baby isn't mine? Or did she think she could make the timing work? What I need: evidence, legal counsel, a plan. I sat back and looked at that last line. A plan. 3 years of marriage, and it came down to a plan. I thought about the past 18 months. Megan crying in our kitchen saying she needed a baby, that it was biological, primal, something she couldn't explain. I'd been honest with her from the start. I'd had a vasectomy at 26 after a pregnancy scare with an ex. Told her before our 3rd date. She said she was fine with it. Said she didn't need children to be happy. I know what you said, she'd told me that night, her eyes wet with tears. I know I said I was okay with it. But Brandon, I was wrong. I'm 30 years old. I feel like something's missing. Something I didn't know I needed. You want a baby? I want your baby, our baby. She'd grabbed my hands then, looked up at me with complete sincerity. Please, Brandon. I know the reversal isn't always successful. I know it's expensive. But I need to try. I need us to try. I'd looked at her, this woman I'd built a life with, this woman I loved, and I'd said yes. Because that's what you do when someone you love asks for something that matters to them. The surgery, the ice packs, the 6 weeks of no activity, the follow-up procedures. All while she was apparently getting what she needed elsewhere: the surgery, the pain, the $15,000 out of pocket because insurance doesn't cover elective reversals. It was all theater. A production designed to give her a cover story when her belly started to swell. I saved the file, closed the laptop. In the darkness of my office, I made myself a promise. I would not be the screaming, crying, broken man. I would not give her the chance to spin this, to play victim, to convince our friends and families that I was the one who'd failed our marriage. If she wanted to play games with my life, she'd learn that I write the rules. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Megan was still asleep beside me, her face peaceful, her breathing slow and even. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd shared a bed with for 3 years. This woman I'd trusted with everything. I used to watch her sleep and feel lucky. Now I just felt tired. I got up, showered, dressed for work. Made coffee the way I always did. When she came downstairs, I kissed her cheek and told her I hoped she had a good day. You too, she said, smiling. Love you. Love you too. The words came out automatically. They meant nothing now. They were just sounds you made to maintain the illusion. I drove to work, sat through meetings, reviewed blueprints, made decisions about load-bearing walls and drainage systems. The world kept turning, indifferent to the fact that mine had collapsed. That evening, I started with the phone records. Our plan was joint, had been since we got married. I logged into the carrier's website while Megan was at work and started scrolling. Most of it was innocuous. Her mom, her sister, a few girlfriends, work numbers. But one number appeared over and over, sometimes 20, 30 texts in a single day. I cross-referenced the timestamps. Thursday afternoons, her yoga class days, showed particular spikes. Late nights when I was traveling for work. Early mornings before I woke up. The number wasn't saved in her contacts. I knew because I'd checked her phone while she was in the shower, hands shaking slightly as I scrolled through looking for something I prayed I wouldn't find. The number was there in her recent calls, unlabeled. She'd been careful, just not careful enough. I ran the number through one of those reverse lookup services. Paid the $14. Waited. Kyle Brennan. The name hit me like a physical blow. I sat there staring at my laptop screen, reading it over and over. Kyle Brennan. Kyle Brennan. Kyle Brennan. Megan's work friend. The guy who'd shown up at our backyard barbecue last summer with a six-pack of craft beer and a firm handshake. I remembered him now with perfect clarity. Athletic build, easy smile, the kind of guy who knew exactly how charming he was and used it like a weapon. Brandon, great to finally meet you, he'd said, gripping my hand. Megan talks about you all the time, says you're the smartest man she knows. She's generous with her compliments. No, seriously, the way she brags about you around the office makes the rest of us look bad. He'd laughed, clapped me on the shoulder. Hey, is that your grill? Beautiful setup, man. What are you cooking? I'd shown him my grilling technique, explained the marinade I used for the ribs. He'd nodded along, asked questions, complimented every answer. Meanwhile, his hand was probably still warm from touching my wife. I remembered more now, small details flooding back with new context. How Megan had seemed nervous that day. How she'd kept glancing at Kyle when she thought no one was looking. How Kyle's wife, Danielle, had seemed just a little too attentive to her husband's whereabouts. Had Danielle suspected something? Had she sensed what I hadn't? He was married. 2 kids. I remembered his wife now, Danielle, a pretty brunette who'd stayed close to Kyle all evening like she was staking her territory. She'd brought a fruit salad and talked to Megan about preschool options, about getting the kids together for playdates. We should do this more often, Danielle had said at the end of the evening. The 4 of us. Kyle's always talking about what a great team you and Megan make. I'd smiled and agreed. Shook Kyle's hand again as they left. Told them to drive safe. Now I understood. Kyle had brought his wife to my house, eaten my food, shaken my hand, all while sleeping with my wife. Danielle had been unwittingly participating in her own humiliation, just like I had. I added Kyle Brennan's name to my file. Underneath it, I wrote, "He will not walk away from this." Then I pulled up the cloud storage linked to our home Wi-Fi. Megan wasn't tech-savvy. She barely knew how to update her phone's software. She certainly didn't realize that her phone automatically backed up photos with location metadata. I started scrolling through the images she thought were private. There. A selfie of her in a hotel bathroom mirror. Nice lingerie, black lace, the kind she hadn't worn for me in months. She was pouting at the camera, one strap falling off her shoulder. The kind of photo you take for someone. I checked the metadata. Downtown, the Marriott on 5th Street. Thursday, 2:47 p.m. She'd told me that night she'd had a great yoga session, that she felt so centered. I found 6 more photos from the same hotel over the next 3 months. Different outfits, same mirror, same pouting expression, same lies. The financial records came next. I pulled up our joint credit card statements and started mapping charges to dates. Megan had asked for $200 a month in a separate savings account a few months back. For baby stuff, she'd said, eyes wide and earnest. I'd thought it was sweet, responsible even. You're already planning for the baby, I'd asked, smiling. I want us to be ready when it happens. And it will happen, Brandon. I believe that. I'd kissed her forehead. Told her I believed it too. But the charges didn't lie. A lingerie store, $180. A spa hotel, $340, on a day she'd supposedly been visiting her sister 3 hours away. The hotel was 20 minutes from Kyle's office. Then I found the secret credit card. It came in the mail, a statement from a card I'd never seen, in her name only. She must have grabbed it before me most days, but that Thursday she'd left for work early, and I'd gotten to the mailbox first. I remember standing in my driveway, flipping through the envelopes. Junk, utility bill, and then this. A credit card statement from Capital One, addressed to Megan Hayes, for an account I knew nothing about. My hands were steady as I opened it. I don't know why that surprised me. Maybe I expected them to shake. $4,200 balance. 8 months of charges I knew nothing about. I read through them line by line, a catalog of betrayal. Men's cologne, $85. Not my brand. I'd never worn cologne in my life. A watch, $800. I didn't wear watches. More hotel rooms, 3 charges at the Marriott. A designer tie, $120. A leather briefcase, $450. Restaurant charges, expensive ones, places she'd never suggested to me. She'd been buying gifts for her lover, putting herself into debt to spoil the man she was sleeping with behind my back. Every charge was a little love note to someone else, financed by lies. I photographed every page with my phone, made sure the lighting was clear, the images sharp, put the statement back in the pile exactly where I'd found it. Later that evening, when Megan got home from work, I watched her sort through the mail. Watched her slip the credit card statement into her purse without looking at me. She didn't even hesitate. It was clearly routine. She'd been doing this for months. "Anything interesting?" I asked. "Just junk." "How was your day?" "Good. Yours?" "Long. I'm exhausted." She stretched, arching her back, one hand pressed to her lower spine. The baby was starting to show now. "What should we do for dinner?" I suggested her favorite Thai place. She lit up. We ate pad Thai and talked about baby names, and I smiled at all the right moments while my chest burned with something I was already learning to contain. "I was thinking," she said, twirling noodles around her fork, "we should start a registry soon. My mom keeps asking." "Sounds good. And maybe, I know it's early, but could we look at cribs this weekend? Just to get ideas?" "Sure," I said. "Whatever you want." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I love you. You know that?" "I know." "No, I mean, I really love you. I'm so glad we're doing this together." I looked at her face, searched for some sign of the lie, some crack in the performance. There was nothing. She either believed what she was saying, or she was a better actress than I'd ever imagined. "Me too," I said. We finished dinner, went home, watched TV on the couch with her head on my shoulder. She fell asleep there, and I sat perfectly still, staring at the screen without seeing it. What kind of person, I wondered, could do what she was doing? What kind of mind could compartmentalize that completely? Sleeping with one man, living with another, carrying a baby that belonged to neither. I didn't have answers. I wasn't sure I wanted them. By week 3, I had a timeline. Cross-referencing everything. Phone records, photos, calendar entries, credit card charges, painted a picture I hadn't wanted to see but needed to understand. The affair hadn't started recently. It wasn't a mistake born of some moment of weakness. It had been going on for at least 14 months. Before my surgery. She had begged me to reverse my vasectomy while she was actively sleeping with another man. I sat with that realization in my car, parked at a construction site my firm was overseeing. Through the windshield, I watched workers move steel beams into place, building something solid and permanent, while my entire life revealed itself to be built on rot. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. It was a plan. She'd pushed for the reversal specifically so she could pass off Kyle's baby as mine. She knew she was pregnant or suspected she might be soon, and she needed a cover story. My surgery was that cover story. The tears she'd cried when she begged me for a child, the gratitude she'd expressed when I agreed, the way she'd held my hand through the pre-op consultations. It was all performance. She'd put on a show while conducting an affair. She'd manipulated my love for her into a weapon she could use. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Let myself have 60 seconds of pure, undiluted rage. Imagined what it would feel like to confront her right then, to scream and throw things, to watch her cry and beg. Then I breathed, loosened my grip, checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Emotion is a liability. Strategy is a weapon. I drove back to the office and called a family law attorney. Victoria Grant's office was on the 14th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and polished wood, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from winning. She'd been recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a brutal divorce 2 years prior. She's expensive, he'd warned me, but she's worth every penny. The woman doesn't lose. I sat across from her and laid out everything. The medical records proving my sterility at the time of conception. The phone records documenting hundreds of communications with Kyle Brennan. The photos with hotel metadata. The financial records showing affair expenditures. The secret credit card. Victoria reviewed it all without interrupting. She made occasional notes, asked me to clarify a timeline here or there, but mostly she just absorbed information like someone who'd seen it all before and wasn't easily impressed. When she finished, she looked up at me with something like respect. Mr. Hayes, in 15 years of family law, I've never seen a client walk in this prepared. I'm an engineer. I build things. I needed to understand the foundation before I could plan the demolition. She almost smiled. Let's talk about your options. The legal landscape was complicated but navigable. Our state was no fault for divorce. Adultery alone wouldn't strip Megan of everything. But it mattered for alimony considerations, for division of assets, and most importantly, for paternity. If this baby is born during your marriage, Victoria explained, you're presumed to be the legal father. That means 18 years of financial responsibility for a child that isn't yours, unless you contest paternity. Walk me through that. DNA test. You file a petition, the court orders the test, and if it shows you're not the biological father, you're off the hook legally. But timing matters. You need to contest before or immediately after the birth. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. She leaned forward. And whatever you do not sign that birth certificate. The moment you put your name on that paper, you're accepting responsibility regardless of biology. I nodded. What about him? Kyle Brennan. What can I do about him? Victoria leaned back in her chair. Legally, most states have abolished alienation of affection lawsuits. You can't sue him for sleeping with your wife. She paused, letting that sink in. But Kyle is married too, isn't he? 2 kids. Wife named Danielle. Nice house. His father-in-law co-signed their mortgage. Well, Victoria said, her lips curving into something that was almost a smile. Information has power, Mr. Hayes. I'm not in the business of telling clients what to do with information. But I will tell you that a man with that much to lose might find his life becoming very complicated if certain facts came to light. I understood perfectly. One more thing, she added. Don't confront your wife, not yet. The element of surprise is valuable. Don't leave the marital home. That could be seen as abandonment and complicate your position. Document everything. And prepare yourself for her to deny, gaslight, and manipulate when the time comes. She met my eyes. Most men in your position react emotionally. They storm home, they scream accusations, they give their cheating spouse plenty of time to hide evidence and craft a narrative. You're reacting strategically. That's rare. Use it. I intend to, she nodded, seemed satisfied. I'll start preparing the paperwork. When you're ready to move forward, we'll be ready to move fast. I told one person, just one. Carter Webb had been my best friend since college, sophomore year, randomly assigned roommates who turned out to be kindred spirits. He'd stood next to me at my wedding. He'd been the first person I called when Dad was diagnosed, and the last person to leave the hospital after Dad died. He'd gone through his own divorce 2 years back, caught his wife cheating via dash cam footage when she didn't realize his Tesla recorded everything. He worked in corporate security now, knew about digital evidence and legal gray areas and how to protect yourself when everything was falling apart. We sat in my garage late one night, 2 beers on the workbench between us, while I told him everything. He was quiet while I talked. Didn't interrupt. Just listened with an expression that got progressively darker. When I finished, Carter was silent for a long moment. His jaw was tight, his hands curled into fists around his beer bottle. "Let me make sure I understand this," he said slowly. "She made you get surgery, made you cut yourself open, go through weeks of recovery, spend 15 grand you didn't have lying around. And the whole time, she was sleeping with this guy. She got pregnant by him, and the surgery was just so she could pretend the baby was yours. That's the summary. That's not cheating, Brandon. That's..." He shook his head, searching for the right word. "That's calculated. That's evil. She watched you recover from surgery. She took care of you, right? Brought you ice packs and helped you to the bathroom? Yeah. And the whole time she was sleeping with Kyle. The whole time she knew exactly why she wanted you to have that operation." He set his beer down hard enough to slosh. "I thought what Amanda did to me was bad. But this, I know." "What do you need?" he asked. And that was Carter. No hand-wringing, no empty sympathy. Just what do you need? "I need to know when she's with him. I need documentation that will hold up. Timestamps, photos, something more than phone records and metadata." Carter nodded slowly. "I know a guy. Licensed PI, ex-law enforcement. He's good, discreet. Not cheap, but good. I can afford expensive. I'll make the call tomorrow." He picked up his beer again, took a long drink. "You sure you want to play it this way? The long game? What's the alternative? Confront her now. Throw her out. Let her figure it out." I shook my head. "Then she controls the narrative. She goes crying to her friends, her family, tells them I abandoned her while she was pregnant. She makes herself the victim and me the villain. And Kyle gets to walk away clean, pretend he was never involved. And this way? This way, when the hammer falls, it falls on everyone. She doesn't get to rewrite history. He doesn't get to escape consequences. They made their choices. I'm just making sure those choices matter." Carter studied me for a moment. "You've changed." "Have I?" The Brandon I knew in college would have confronted her the same day he found out. Would have been banging on Kyle's door by nightfall. The Brandon you knew in college didn't know what it felt like to be this thoroughly betrayed by someone he loved. I finished my beer. Pain is a good teacher. It taught me patience. Pain can also make you into someone you don't want to be. Maybe. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. Carter nodded slowly. "Okay, then I'm with you. Whatever you need." 3 days later, I sat across from Raymond Steele in a diner on the edge of town. He was in his 50s, gray at the temples, with the kind of eyes that had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. He wore a plain gray suit that probably cost more than it looked like, and he ordered coffee without looking at the menu. I gave him what I had: the phone number, the hotel, the Thursday afternoon pattern. "What do you need?" he asked. "Everything. Photos, video if possible, timeline. I want to know every time they've been together for as long as you can track." He made a note on a small pad. "Legally obtained? I don't want anything that can't be used." "Smart." He looked up at me. "Give me 3 weeks. I'll give you everything. But Mr. Hayes, I have to ask. What are you planning to do with this information?" "That depends on what you find." He accepted that with a small nod. "Fair enough. I'll be in touch." We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive. A professional. One more thing, I said before he left. His wife, Danielle Brennan. I want to know about her too. Her routines, her schedule, anything that might be relevant. Raymond raised an eyebrow but didn't ask why. I'll see what I can find. Thank you. I watched him walk out of the diner, climb into a nondescript sedan, and drive away. Then I sat there for another 20 minutes, nursing cold coffee and thinking about what came next. The waiting was the hardest part. I'd always been a man of action. Identify the problem, design the solution, implement it. But this required patience. This required letting other people do their jobs while I maintained the facade at home. Every day, I woke up next to Megan, made breakfast, kissed her goodbye, came home to dinner, asked about her day, rubbed her feet when she said they were sore, talked about the future like it actually existed. Every night I updated my encrypted file with new observations, new lies she'd told, new texts she'd exchanged with Kyle, new charges on the secret credit card. By the end of week 2, I had a map of her deception that was almost beautiful in its completeness. Every thread connected to every other thread. Every lie supported by documentation. Every betrayal cataloged and time-stamped. I was building a case, and when it was finished, it would be airtight. Playing the devoted husband was the hardest role I'd ever performed. I went to every prenatal appointment, held Megan's hand while the doctor pointed at the ultrasound screen and showed us the baby's heartbeat, Kyle's baby's heartbeat, and said things like, "Nice strong heartbeat," and "developing right on schedule." I nodded and smiled and asked all the right questions. "Do you have any concerns, Dad?" the doctor asked me during one visit. Dad. The word was a knife. "Just want to make sure everything's healthy," I said. "That's all that matters." Megan squeezed my hand, looked at me with what appeared to be genuine love. "He's going to be the best father," I smiled at her. "I hope so." I painted the nursery, picked a soft gray because it was gender neutral, because I couldn't stomach choosing pink or blue for a child that wasn't mine. Spent a whole Saturday with a roller brush, covering the walls while Megan sat in a chair and talked about baby names. "I've always loved the name Sophie for a girl," she said. "What do you think?" "It's beautiful." "And for a boy?" "I was thinking maybe Tyler or Jacob." "Let's wait until we know," I said. "No rush." She watched me roll the paint onto the walls, hand resting on her belly. "Thank you for doing this." "Of course." "No, I mean, thank you for all of it. The surgery, the appointments, this room." She teared up. She did that a lot now, which she blamed on hormones. "I know I pushed for this. I know it was hard on you. But look what we're getting. Look what you gave us." I climbed down from the stepladder, crossed to where she sat, took her face in my hands. "I'd do anything for this family," I said. She smiled through her tears, believed every word. I went back to painting. I read parenting books in front of her, highlighted passages, asked her opinion on sleep training methods and the best brand of diapers, told our friends and families that I couldn't wait to be a dad. "You're going to be a natural," my mother said during Sunday dinner. "I can already tell." "We'll see," I said. "I just want to do right by the baby." Megan beamed. My mother beamed. Everyone beamed. And I watched her unravel. The guilt was eating her alive. I could see it in 1,000 small ways. She was overly affectionate, always touching me, always telling me she loved me like she was trying to convince herself. She cried at random moments that had nothing to do with hormones. She started arguments over nothing. I'd leave a dish in the sink and she'd explode, then apologize profusely, desperately. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she'd say, hugging me. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to yell." "It's okay. Hormones. I just love you so much." "I love you too." Classic guilt-driven behavior. I noted everything. The texts with Kyle continued. I checked the phone records weekly and watched the communication pattern stay consistent. The Thursday yoga classes kept happening. She thought she was getting away with it. She had no idea that every lie she told was being cataloged, time-stamped, and filed away. One evening, we were sitting on the couch watching some reality show she liked. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and a small smile crossed her face before she could suppress it. A private smile. An intimate smile. Work stuff? I asked casually. Just my mom. I knew her mom's number by heart. That wasn't it. Tell her I said hi, I said, and went back to watching the screen. She didn't respond, just tucked her phone under her thigh where I couldn't see it. Raymond delivered his report on week 16. We met at the same diner. He slid a thick envelope across the table. 47 hotel visits in 14 months, he said. Time-stamped photographs, video from public spaces, parking garages, hotel lobbies, everything legal, everything admissible. I opened the envelope. There she was. Megan, walking into the Marriott. Kyle arriving 10 minutes later. Photos of them leaving together, his hand on the small of her back, the casual intimacy of two people who had done this dozens of times. A photo of them kissing in a parking garage. Her hands on his chest, his fingers in her hair. A photo of them sitting in his car, heads close together, laughing at something. A photo of her getting out of his passenger seat, straightening her clothes. He paid for most of the rooms with a personal card, Raymond continued, separate from his joint accounts with his wife. But your wife picked up the tab a few times, explains that credit card debt. I flipped through the photos. Each one was a small death. Each one was also a brick in the wall I was building around my future. Patterns consistent, Raymond said. Thursday afternoons, occasional Tuesday lunches. He tells his wife he's got client meetings. His wife, Danielle. Nice lady, from what I can tell. 2 kids in elementary school. She has no idea. I closed the envelope. Thank you, Raymond. You going to be okay? I looked up at him. This man who'd spent weeks documenting the destruction of my marriage, who'd watched my wife betray me over and over through a camera lens. I'm going to be fine, I said. I've got what I need now. What are you going to do with it? I put the envelope in my briefcase. Left enough cash on the table to cover his coffee and mine, plus a generous tip. I'm going to make sure everyone faces the consequences of their choices. He nodded slowly. Be careful, Mr. Hayes. Revenge has a way of consuming the person who seeks it. This isn't revenge, I said. It's just reality. I'm just making sure reality happens. The letter to Danielle Brennan took me 3 hours to write. I didn't sign it. Didn't include a return address. Typed it on a public library computer, printed it on their printer, handled the paper with gloves I'd bought from a hardware store. Dear Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry you have to learn this way. Your husband Kyle has been having an affair for over 14 months. The other woman's name is Megan Hayes. She works at his company. She's currently pregnant, and Kyle is the father. I know you have no reason to believe an anonymous letter, so I've included proof. These photographs were taken over the past several weeks. Check his credit card statements, the personal one, not the joint account. Check his Thursday afternoons. Check the Marriott on 5th Street. You deserve to know the truth. What you do with it is up to you. I included 4 photographs. Kyle and Megan entering the hotel. The kiss in the parking garage. 2 shots of them leaving together. Then I drove 2 hours away, to a town where I'd never been and would never go again, and dropped the letter in a random mailbox on a random street corner. No cameras, no trace, no connection to me. I drove home and cooked dinner for my wife. The first domino fell exactly 1 week later. Danielle Brennan received my letter on a Tuesday. By Thursday, she'd done exactly what I'd suggested. Checked the credit card statements, made some calls, confirmed the hotel visits. Thursday evening, she confronted Kyle. I knew all of this because I was watching the phone records. The spike in communication between Kyle and Megan was immediate and frantic. Where there had been flirty, consistent texting, suddenly there were dozens of calls, panicked voicemails, desperate messages. I couldn't read the content, but I could read the frequency. Something had gone very wrong in Kyle's world. I was in my home office when the first panicked call came through. I watched the log update in real time on my laptop, saw the duration tick upward. 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 12 minutes. Then a flurry of texts. Then another call. Megan came home that night wound tight as a spring. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red-rimmed. She'd clearly been crying. "Hey," I said, looking up from the book I was pretending to read. "You okay?" "Fine, just work stress." "You look upset." I said I'm fine. The words came out sharper than she probably intended. She caught herself, softened. "Sorry, big project deadline. You know how it is." "Anything I can help with?" "No, I just need to... I'm going to take a bath." She stayed in the bathroom for an hour. I heard her crying through the door. Heard her on the phone. Muffled words I couldn't make out, but the tone was unmistakable. Desperate. Scared. I went back to my book. The next day, Kyle showed up at Megan's office. I got this from Carter, who still had contacts at various corporate security firms. Kyle had caused a scene, stormed past reception, demanded to speak with Megan, made enough noise that security got involved. The guards had to physically escort him from the building. He was yelling, Carter told me over the phone. Something about how she did this to him, how she ruined his life. The whole lobby heard it. HR. "Oh yeah, they're investigating. Kyle's been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome." I allowed myself a small smile. Good. It's not good for Megan, though. She's connected to this now. Everyone at her company knows she was having an affair with a married coworker. That sounds like her problem. Carter was quiet for a moment. "You really are different." "I'm just realistic." Danielle filed for divorce the following week. She'd hired a good attorney, the kind you hire when you have family money and a father who wants to protect his grandchildren. Kyle didn't contest anything. He knew he had no leverage. The ripple effects spread from there. Kyle's father-in-law demanded repayment of the $80,000 he'd contributed to their mortgage. Kyle's company conducted an internal review and determined he'd been conducting an affair during work hours, using company resources for personal activities. They fired him. In the space of 2 weeks, Kyle Brennan went from successful marketing executive with a nice house and a pretty wife and 2 kids to unemployed, divorced, facing financial ruin. And Megan was next. I confronted Megan on a Friday evening. She was 5 months pregnant now, showing clearly, wearing maternity clothes she'd bought with money from our joint account for a baby that wasn't mine. She'd been distracted and anxious for weeks. The Kyle situation was spiraling, and she couldn't tell me about any of it. I came home from work at my usual time, set my briefcase down by the door, found her in the kitchen, staring at her phone with red-rimmed eyes. "Hey," she said, forcing a smile. "How was your day?" "Fine. Can we talk?" Something in my tone made her freeze. "Sure. What's wrong?" I poured 2 glasses of water. Not wine, not anything that might dull her reactions. I needed her sharp. I needed her to understand every word. "I know about Kyle," I said. The color drained from her face in real time. It was fascinating to watch, in a clinical sort of way, like observing a subject in an experiment. "What? I don't. I held up a hand. "I'm not interested in your explanations. I've known since Dr. Whitfield's office. I've known for 5 months." She started to speak. Stopped. Started again. "Brandon, The baby was conceived when I was sterile, Megan. My sperm count was 0. You know this because you were at every appointment with me. I kept my voice level, calm, almost gentle. You made me get surgery, painful, expensive surgery, so you could pass off another man's child as mine. That's not, I never meant. You've been sleeping with Kyle Brennan for 14 months. You met him at the hotel on 5th Street every Thursday during your yoga class. You bought him gifts with a credit card you hid from me, cologne, a watch, a briefcase. Her mouth opened and closed. Tears were streaming down her face now. How do you know all this? Her voice was rising, panic cracking through. Have you been spying on me? I've been protecting myself, from you. She started crying then. Real tears, ugly tears, the kind that make your face blotchy and your nose run. She reached for me, and I stepped back. Brandon, please. I love you. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I let the words land. You committed a 14-month deception while I bled on an operating table for you. I never wanted to hurt you. Kyle, he made me feel things and I got confused, and then I was pregnant and I didn't know what to do. You knew exactly what to do. You had a plan. The reversal surgery was your plan. The timing was your plan. You were going to let me raise another man's child and never tell me the truth. She collapsed onto a kitchen chair, sobbing. What are you going to do? I sat across from her. Looked at this woman I'd loved. This woman I'd built a life with. This woman who had betrayed me in the most calculated, cruel way imaginable. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm filing for divorce Monday morning. I will contest paternity. There will be a DNA test, and we both know what it will show. The house is mine. I bought it before we were married, and that's documented. You can keep your personal belongings. Brandon, I'm offering you a clean, quiet divorce. No public spectacle. We sign the papers, we go our separate ways, and that's the end of it. And if I fight you? I let the question hang for a moment. Then I release everything. Photos, timeline, financial records, to our families, to our friends, to anyone who asks what happened to the happy couple. I'll show them the lingerie receipts and the hotel metadata and the photos of you kissing your lover in a parking garage. Her crying intensified. You can't do this. I'm pregnant. You can't just abandon me. I'm not abandoning anything that was ever mine. I stood up, walked to the doorway, turned back. You should call Kyle. Tell him you need him now. See how that works out for you. I slept in the guest room that night. Listened to her cry through the walls. Felt nothing. The next few weeks were an exercise in watching someone's life fall apart. Megan tried everything. The textbook responses of a cheater who's been caught, one after another, as if she'd read a manual on how to manipulate your way out of consequences. Love bombing came first. Suddenly she was cooking my favorite meals every night. She bought me a new watch. Expensive. Far more than she could afford. Left little notes around the house. I love you more than anything. You're my whole world. Thank you for being you. I found one on my pillow one morning. It said, I don't deserve you, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to. I read it, put it in my evidence file, went to work. Guilt tripping came next. She'd stand in the doorway of the guest room, hand resting on her growing belly, and talk about how I was abandoning my family. What about the baby? She'd say, tears streaming down her face. What about everything we planned? You said you wanted this. You said you wanted to be a father. I wanted to be a father to my child, I said. That's not what this is. It could be. If you just let yourself love her. Her? Megan froze, caught herself. I just have a feeling. Maternal instinct. I nodded slowly. Maternal instinct. Right. Threats came next. She'd tell everyone I was heartless. She'd make sure no one ever spoke to me again. She'd destroy my reputation, tell the whole world what a monster I was for abandoning a pregnant woman. Go ahead, I said. Tell them. And when they ask why I left, I'll show them the photos, the credit card statements, the medical records proving I wasn't even capable of getting you pregnant when this baby was conceived. That shut her up for a while. Finally came the victim card. Kyle had manipulated her. She was confused. She didn't know what she was doing. She was lonely because I traveled so much for work, and Kyle had been there when I wasn't. He told me you didn't appreciate me, she said one evening, sobbing on the couch. He said you were taking me for granted, and I believed him. I was so stupid. I was so alone. You were so alone that you started sleeping with him before you even asked me for the surgery. She went quiet. Yeah, I said. I know the timeline. I know exactly when this started. Before the vasectomy reversal. Before you begged me to let doctors cut me open so we could have a baby together. You were already pregnant by him, weren't you? Or you suspected you might be soon. The surgery was never about us having a child. It was about you having a cover story. She couldn't deny it. Couldn't even try. Brandon, please. I'm done, Megan. I've been done for months. I was just waiting for the right time to tell you. I walked out, left her crying on the couch, went to the guest room and closed the door. I responded to none of her attempts at reconciliation. You can tell people whatever you want, I said the next day. I have documentation. Meanwhile, Kyle Brennan's life remained in free fall. Danielle had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody. Her father, the one who'd co-signed their mortgage, was demanding repayment of the $80,000 he'd contributed. Kyle was fired from his job after HR concluded he'd been conducting an affair during work hours, using company time for personal matters. He tried to contact me once, called my office, left a message saying he needed to talk. Man to man, he'd said. Please, I just want to explain. I didn't respond. There was nothing to explain, nothing to discuss. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with them. Megan reached out to Kyle too, expecting him to step up. He was the father after all. Surely he would want to be involved? Surely he would help her, now that everything had fallen apart. Kyle's response, which Megan shared with me during one of her desperate attempts at manipulation. I can't do this, Megan. I've lost everything. My wife, my kids, my job. I can't take on more. I'm sorry. I just can't. He abandoned her too. The man she'd risked everything for, the man she'd betrayed me for, the man whose baby was growing inside her. He wanted nothing to do with the mess they'd created together. When the pressure came, he crumbled. Megan was alone, pregnant, facing divorce, her affair partner unwilling to have anything to do with her. Her family knew now. I'd sent her parents a brief, factual email explaining the situation. No drama, no accusations, just the facts. They were devastated. They'd loved me. Her father called me to apologize for his daughter's behavior, said he'd raised her better than this. I don't know what to say, he told me, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Brandon. You didn't deserve any of this. No, I didn't. If there's anything I can do. There isn't. But thank you. Her friends distanced themselves. Funny how people do that when the sympathetic narrative collapses. When you can't play the victim anymore, when the evidence is too overwhelming to deny, when everyone knows exactly what you did, people stop wanting to be associated with you. By the end of the month, Megan was alone in a way I don't think she'd ever experienced. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just the cold clarity of someone who'd done what needed to be done. The divorce proceedings were almost anticlimactic. Megan hired a budget attorney. She couldn't afford more, since she had no assets of her own and I wasn't paying for anything. The guy was competent enough, I suppose, but he was out of his league against Victoria Grant. Our first court appearance was brief. Victoria presented a summary of our case, and I watched the judge's expression shift from neutral to something approaching disgust as she laid out the facts. The timeline, the medical records, the financial deception. Your Honor, Megan's attorney tried, my client acknowledges that there were difficulties in the marriage. But she's pregnant. She has no income of her own. And Mr. Hayes is seeking to leave her with nothing. Nothing except the consequences of her own choices, Victoria responded smoothly. My client underwent a painful medical procedure, paid for out of pocket, based on his wife's fraudulent representations. She was already engaged in an extramarital affair when she begged him for that surgery. The pregnancy was conceived during a period when my client was documented as sterile. The medical records are unambiguous. The judge looked at Megan. She couldn't meet his eyes. Mrs. Hayes, he said, is there any dispute about the timeline your husband's attorney has presented? Megan's lawyer leaned over, whispered something. Megan shook her head. No, Your Honor, her attorney said. We do not dispute the timeline. I see. The rest was formality. Victoria had prepared meticulously, and Megan had no leverage, no assets, no favorable facts, nothing to bargain with. Victoria Grant went through the opposing counsel like a hot knife through butter. The evidence was overwhelming. The timeline was irrefutable. Megan's attorney advised her to settle because she had no leverage, nothing to bargain with, no position from which to negotiate. Final terms, I kept the house. I kept my business stake. No alimony, short marriage, she was employable. Her documented conduct made any judge unlikely to award spousal support. Megan kept her car and her personal belongings. She was responsible for her secret credit card debt. Paternity would be formally contested. When we signed the final papers, Megan looked at me across the conference table. She looked smaller than I remembered. Diminished. The confidence and vitality I'd fallen in love with had drained away, replaced by something hollow. I never meant for any of this to happen, she said quietly. And yet here we are. Brandon. Goodbye, Megan. I stood up and walked out. Never looked back. The baby was born in April. A healthy girl. I did not visit the hospital. I did not send flowers or a card. I did not acknowledge the birth in any way. The DNA test confirmed what I'd known for 8 months. Kyle Brennan was the biological father. I was not legally or financially responsible for the child. I never signed the birth certificate. Victoria called me with the results. It's official, she said. The paternity test came back. Kyle Brennan is the biological father. You're off the hook completely. Thank you. Mr. Hayes, Brandon, I've done this for a long time. I've seen a lot of divorces, a lot of betrayals, a lot of broken marriages. But I want you to know that I've never seen a client handle a situation like this with more grace under pressure. You should be proud of yourself. I'm just ready for it to be over. It is. It's over. Go live your life. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after the birth. I walked out of the courthouse into a bright spring morning, took a deep breath of air that tasted like freedom, and felt the last knot in my chest finally loosen. Carter was waiting by my car. He'd taken the morning off to be there for the final hearing. So, he asked. Done. He nodded, extended his hand. I shook it. How do you feel? I thought about it, tried to identify the emotion swirling in my chest. Empty, I said finally. But in a good way, like something toxic has been drained out of me. That sounds about right. Thank you for everything. That's what friends are for. We stood there for a moment, 2 men in suits outside a courthouse not saying anything. You want to get lunch? Carter asked. Celebrate? I'm not sure this is something to celebrate. Then let's just get lunch, because it's over and you survived, and that's worth marking somehow. I smiled, the first real smile I'd managed in months. Yeah, lunch sounds good. A year later, I was a different person. The business had expanded. 2 new contracts, a bigger team. I'd thrown myself into work and work had responded. Started therapy, not because I was falling apart, but because I recognized that what happened left marks that needed tending. I started dating. Carefully, slowly. Rachel was an architect I met at a professional conference. Smart, direct, successful. Our first date was coffee that turned into a 3-hour conversation. "You're very guarded," she told me on our third date. "I've had shoes drop before." "Want to tell me about it?" So I did. She listened without interrupting. "That's horrific," she said when I finished. "I'm not sorry it happened. I wouldn't have the life I have now if I hadn't gone through it." She smiled. "That's not a bad way to look at it." Carter came over for a barbecue on a Saturday afternoon. We stood on my deck with beers in hand, watching the sun sink toward the trees. "You ever regret how you handled it?" he asked. "No. Not even a little?" "I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just removed myself from the blast radius," Carter snorted, "and made sure everyone saw the explosion. Consequences aren't revenge. They're just reality." We drank in silence. "So," Carter said eventually, "this Rachel woman, getting serious?" "Maybe. We're taking it slow." "Good." He clinked his bottle against mine. "To surviving. To surviving." Rachel texted me that night after Carter left. "Thinking about you. Want to get breakfast tomorrow?" I smiled at my phone. "Yeah," I wrote back. "I'd like that." The night was quiet. My house was peaceful. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I went to sleep without dreading what tomorrow might bring. The story of Brandon and Megan Hayes was over. The story of Brandon Hayes was just getting started.